I didn't realize silence could have a shape until Vera gave it to our house. 3 weeks ago, my wife stopped talking to me. Not a "we need space" pause. Not the classic "I'm fine" with a dagger under it. I'm talking full Olympic-level silent treatment. No good mornings, no "how was your day," no "do we need milk." If I vanished, the only difference would have been fewer cabinet doors closing, just loud enough to be heard. I used to panic when she did this. I'd apologize for things I couldn't name. I'd buy flowers. I'd offer to cancel plans. I once even wrote a 3-paragraph text to explain why I wanted to grill chicken instead of salmon. This time, I made a cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and listened to the hum of the fridge and the soft whir of my own brain turning back on. It was like somebody cracked a window in a stale room. It wasn't quiet. It was breathable. You want the origin story? It's not dramatic. I wanted to watch a basketball game with a couple of guys from work. Thursday night, sports bar. Wings. That's it. I said it at dinner like a normal person. Vera put her fork down like she was pinning evidence to the table. "Sure," she said. "Go have your boys' night. Don't expect me to be here waiting for you." If this sounds familiar, it's because we've been here 100 times. I said I wasn't choosing them over her. She said the words priorities and respect like she had them monogrammed. I should have seen the net closing. Instead, I said, "Actually, I think I will go." Thanks for understanding, curtain up. The next morning, there was a Vera-shaped hole in the air. Not in the physical way. She was very much there, rearranging bowls that didn't need rearranging, moving a plant 1 inch closer to the window and back again, setting her coffee down like it offended her. But she had withdrawn the thing she prized most, her attention as currency. No words, no reactions, just the promise that if I begged hard enough, maybe the bank would open again. I nearly fell for it. Day 1, I hovered at the kitchen doorway like a cat who forgot where it lives. "Want me to grab anything from the store?" I asked. She looked at the space 2 inches left of my face. "Okay," I said to nobody, and left for work. On day 2, I brought her coffee, made exactly how she likes it. Honey, cinnamon, oat milk steamed just under a latte's dignity. I set it on the counter. She slid it aside with tongs and continued stirring air in a pot. Day 3. I realized I hadn't watched what I wanted to watch on TV in months. I turned on a grimy detective show Vera hates. According to her, it's too dark and too loud and too male, which is funny because that's exactly how our living room felt when she sighed through my shows like they were second-hand smoke. This time, the only soundtrack was gunmetal dialogue and a microwave beep. I didn't even turn it down. I sat there, drank a beer, and let my shoulders drop. I didn't know my shoulders had been up for 5 years. Here's the thing that made the difference. I stopped trying to fix it. Usually, I would break first. I'd ask what I did wrong. She'd give me the final exam with all the trick questions. I'd fail, then promise terms of parole. Fewer nights out, less time at the gym. She always thought that was a phase. Less anything that looked like a life with my name on the deed. This time, I gave myself permission to be boringly alive. I texted Mike from work about the weekend game. He wrote back with 3 flame emojis, which I'm pretty sure mean bring napkins. I signed up for the gym I've driven past for a year while telling myself my metabolism would forgive me. I went. It was full of people who know how treadmills operate and men in tank tops with motivational tattoos that sounded like they were written by a committee of wolves. I hated it. Then I loved it. Then I hated it again and finished the set anyway. I got a message from a college friend asking if I was still breathing. "You dropped off the face of the planet," he wrote. "Is gravity different at your house?" I laughed out loud alone in my car like a divorced man in a sandwich commercial. I told him I'd been busy being a husband. He wrote back, "To who? The Queen?" Day 5, I stopped narrating my movements to the ghost of Vera's disapproval. I went to the gym without leaving a note. I ate after 9 like a criminal. I watched another detective show with more guns and fewer hugs. Each tiny choice added up to a sentence I hadn't said to myself in years. I like being me. Vera noticed, obviously. Silence is powerful until it meets indifference. That's when it starts squeaking. She made sure I heard cabinets close, keys land in the bowl, footsteps upstairs. She did that thing where you wipe a counter that isn't dirty. She hovered near doorways like the concept of unresolved tension had to be staged properly to qualify for award season. I left a box of her favorite chocolate on the counter with a note, "Best week ever." That was not mature. I do not care. She took the chocolate and left the note. I took that as a review. By the second weekend, the house felt different. Lighter. Not physically. Vera still occupied the same number of rooms at once. But something in me stopped bracing. I didn't realize how much bracing I was doing until I wasn't. It turns out vigilance is exhausting cardio. I started sleeping better, eating better, joking more with people who actually laughed. One night I stayed late at the gym for a boxing class. I've never hit a thing that hit back. The bag didn't, but it looked like it wanted to. By the end, my arms were hot filaments, and my brain was quiet the way a lake is quiet after winter. I drove home with the windows down and no dread about how the doorknob would feel in my hand. Vera, to her credit, remained consistent. If silence were a craft, she was an artisan. She could answer a question with a look at a wall. She could suggest contempt using only the way she placed a spoon. She went about her business like a cat who read Machiavelli. I realized something uncomfortable. I had helped build this, not on purpose, but faithfully. All those times I apologized for wanting what I wanted. A game, a beer, an hour alone, the gym. I had laid a brick. Every time I let her define what counted as respectful, I gave her the ruler. And after a while, I didn't measure anything for myself. It was easier to ask for permission than endure the lesson. Then I stopped asking. It's funny how freedom looks like nothing from the outside. No confetti, just eating what you want and going where you want and living in your house without filing a report. But inside, it feels like you went from breath mints to oxygen. By week 3, I had a routine. Gym in the morning, actual lunch break like a mammal, text one friend a day, detective show at night. I didn't say any of this out loud. I didn't need to. The point wasn't to perform independence, it was to make it boring. Boring is sustainable. Drama burns fuel. The boys heard about the game by then. Someone said, "We should watch it at your place." If you're wondering whether I hesitated, of course I did. But I said, yeah, my place. Saturday, I didn't ask permission. I didn't draft a statement. I bought wings, a mountain of napkins, and a case of beer with labels that looked like they were designed by angry bears. I cleaned the downstairs, not for Vera, not for the guys, for me. It's my house. It's allowed to look like I live there. Saturday arrived looking normal. At 5:30, the doorbell rang. Mike came in first with a grin and a bag that smelled like garlic and bad decisions. Dev followed carrying chips like he was donating them to a museum. Tom brought a dip that required an oven and 3 YouTube videos. Within 10 minutes, the living room had a pulse I hadn't heard in years, the gathered thud of people who like each other. We cracked beers. The game came on. The pre-game show said things like, "Establish the paint," and "defensive intensity," as if that meant anything to humans. We yelled at commercials out of principle. We argued about a call none of us understood. Vera wasn't prepared for the sound. Not the volume, she's tolerated volume, but the quality. Laughter has a texture you can't pretend not to hear. It's a claim. It says, "This space includes joy." She passed through the living room on the way to nowhere, eyes forward like we were a painting she didn't care for. Dev said, "Hey Vera," because Dev is a good man who thinks politeness is a baton you can pass. She nodded at an unoccupied corner and went into the kitchen, where cabinet doors resumed their new career as percussion. We didn't lower our voices. We didn't raise them either. We just kept being exactly the volume of 4 men watching something that doesn't matter in a way that obviously does. I could feel the before Ron itching to explain. He would have said, "Hey guys, let's keep it down." He would have pre-apologized for breathing. I shut him in a mental coat closet with the umbrellas and told him to take a nap. At halftime, we invaded the kitchen like pilgrims. I handed plates to whoever reached first. Mike opened the oven and burned his forearm and pretended he didn't. Dev tried to find a serving spoon and discovered Vera's drawer system, which is organized by moral worth instead of logic. Vera stood at the far end of the counter, slicing a cucumber like it owed her money. She didn't look up. Her silence floated at us like a weather front. The guys did that awkward shuffle you don't want to walk through a force field in case it's alive. "Need the cutting board?" I asked Mike, mostly to say something in the kitchen that wasn't an apology. "Nah," he said. "I can operate a plate like a professional." Vera stacked her slices. She moved to the fridge. She opened it and stared, then closed it slightly harder than necessary. She straightened a towel that didn't need straightening. She glanced past me the way a cat glances past a glass. I set out the wings. I set out the beer. I set out a bowl of carrots as if that would convince anyone we were respectable. We lingered, waiting for the moment to become weird. It didn't. It stayed ordinary. There's power in letting a normal moment stay normal. Back in the living room, the game picked up. The guys fell into the low, happy hum that happens when sports are good background and better excuse. We told stories. We made fun of each other. We talked about a guy from college who once tried to microwave a fork and called it science. I laughed so hard my face hurt. I forgot to check the doorway every 30 seconds. Vera performed a masterclass in silent objection. She walked through just as a joke landed, not to share it, but to collect the air it used. She rolled her eyes in a way that translated into 6 languages. She closed a door as if gravity changed in that part of the house. She never said a word. The fourth quarter arrived and brought chaos. Mike stood up for no reason, like his legs had something to contribute. Dev clapped at a play that our team didn't even make. Tom invented a superstition with his cap and refused to take it off. The house breathed in and out with strangers on a screen, and I remembered why people keep doing this dumb ritual. For 90 minutes, you're 10 again, yelling at a TV with your friends and believing it matters. When it was over, and it ended with a win that felt personally validating even though it wasn't, we did the cleanup dance. Cans in the bag, plates in the sink, not because women will judge us, but because we were raised by people who taught us the difference between fun and being a raccoon. By 10:30, the guys filtered out with hugs and threats to repeat it. The house fell back to a normal heartbeat. I stood by the coffee table, a plate in my hand, and realized I wasn't bracing for anything. I was full and tired and hoarse and fine. Vera appeared in the doorway, arms folded. She leaned against the frame the way a prosecutor leans on a question. Her eyes were sharp but tired. She didn't say a word. She was deep in character. But the expression was clear. This was a trespass. I didn't speak either. I nodded once and took the plates to the kitchen. I washed them. I wiped the counter. I threw out the carrots because obviously. I turned off the TV. I turned out the lights. I went upstairs to bed. For the first time in years, I fell asleep before my brain could file a noise complaint. Morning came crisp and obnoxiously blue. I woke up before my alarm for no noble reason other than my body had decided it liked existing again. I shaved without rehearsing conversations. I brewed coffee that tasted like an apology I didn't need to make. I sat at the table and scrolled nothing. Vera walked in. She looked exactly like herself, which is to say, immaculate and underwhelmed. She poured coffee with precision. She stood across from me and considered the steam like it had done something wrong. Then she spoke. "Did you seriously bring them here?" The first sentence from her in 21 days was a question shaped like a warning. I kept my voice level. "Yeah." "In our home," she said, as if I might have confused it with a community center. "In our home," I said. "Where I live. Where my friends are welcome." She blinked slow. "After everything." "After everything," I said. It felt good to not fill silence with a speech. I had a good time. She set her cup down like she was planting a flag. I was waiting, she said, for you to realize what you did and apologize. I looked at her, really looked. She was beautiful in that deliberate way. Every angle curated, every loose end tied into a bow you're not allowed to untie. I used to think that meant strength. Maybe it does. But it also means control, and I've been living under it like a ceiling fan on high. I did realize something, I said. For 3 weeks, I slept better, ate better, laughed more, watched what I wanted, saw people who like me. I remembered I'm a person, Vera, not a student in detention. You thought you were punishing me. You gave me space to breathe. She opened her mouth, and for a second, I saw the storm roll in. Then I saw something else. Uncertainty. The story she told herself about me, the husband who apologizes on command, didn't match the man at the table. I'm not doing the cycle again, I said. The one where I beg, you pardon me, and I sign another invisible contract that says I'll be smaller next time. Her jaw set. So that's it? You'll just, what? Live like a frat boy? I smiled. Like an adult. She laughed once, a sharp, humorless sound. You think this is about a game? I think this is about 5 years of me handing you the pen. I'm taking it back. I stood. I'm going to work. And when you come home, she said. I'll come home, I said, to my house. I left my cup in the sink and grabbed my keys. On the way out, I added, because truth should be spoken plainly when it finally shows up. If the cost of peace is your silence, I can pay it forever. The door clicked behind me. It wasn't loud. In the car, I sat for a moment and watched the morning start. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel cruel. I felt accurate. Something fundamental had shifted back into alignment, like a chiropractor with a conscience had visited my spine. At lunch, I called a lawyer. Not in a blaze of rage, not as revenge, just logistics. A conversation about next steps with a person who treats marriages like contracts, which is awful and necessary. He talked about words like petition and filing and dates that sound like courtrooms. I listened, took notes, and realized my hand wasn't shaking. On the drive home, I didn't think about what to say to Vera. I didn't rehearse being reasonable. I didn't prepare to be scolded. I turned up the radio and let a stupid pop song with 3 chords and a rented chorus remind me that joy is often simple and a little embarrassing. When I opened the door, the house smelled like lemon cleaner and a last stand. The living room was perfect. The kitchen counters gleamed like a promise she meant to keep to herself. There was a stack of folded towels on a chair and a pair of my gym shorts on top, as if she needed to curate even my sweat. I took a breath, and the air went all the way down. Tomorrow I'll make it official. Today I'll let the reality settle. Not the drama of it, not the scene, but the math. We don't work. I've known it in micro for years. Now I know it in macro, in a way that doesn't need anyone's permission. I went upstairs and sat on the edge of the bed for a minute, letting the quiet sink in. No bags, no plans to run. This was still my home, and I was staying. I smiled to myself, grabbed my phone, and typed, BBQ Sunday, I'll bring the steaks. My brother replied in 10 seconds, about time. I set the phone down and leaned back, finally breathing like the house was mine again. Vera didn't talk to me that night, or the next morning, but the silence had changed. It wasn't a weapon anymore. It was the sound of something dying slowly, a thing that used to scare me. Now it just sounded tired. When I came home that evening, the house felt staged. Everything was too clean, too arranged, like Vera had been preparing for an audience. I walked into the living room and found Dana, her sister, sitting on the couch, legs crossed, one hand on her knee like she was about to deliver a verdict. Vera was standing off to the side, arms folded, chin up. Ron, Dana started, voice smooth, rehearsed. We need to talk. I hung my keys on the hook and leaned against the doorway. Of course we do. She gestured at the chair across from her. Sit down. I didn't. Say what you came to say. Dana's eyes narrowed just slightly. Vera tells me you've been shutting her out, doing whatever you want, inviting people over without asking. Inviting people over? I cut her off with a laugh. You make it sound like I brought home a biker gang. I had 3 friends over to watch a game. In my house. That's not the point, Dana shot back. The point is, she's your wife. She deserves respect. Respect? I tilted my head. You mean the kind where I apologize for existing until she decides I've been punished enough? That kind of respect? Vera flinched, almost imperceptibly. Dana pressed on. She's hurt, Ron. You can't just shut her out like this. I stepped into the room, calm and deliberate. She shut me out first. 3 weeks of silence, 3 weeks of pretending I didn't exist. And you know what happened? I remembered who I am. I started breathing again. You think I'm shutting her out, but I'm just done crawling on eggshells. Vera finally spoke, her voice sharp. So that's it? You think you're some kind of hero because you had a few beers with your buddies? No, I said, looking right at her. I think I'm done playing a game where the rules change every time you feel ignored. The room went quiet. Dana glanced between us like she was watching a tennis match she hadn't bet on. Ron, Dana said finally, marriages go through rough patches. You two need therapy, communication. We had 3 weeks of communication, I said, cutting her off. The silent kind. And it was the clearest message I've ever gotten. I am happier without this constant tension, happier without the control. And I am not going back. Dana blinked, then turned to Vera as if waiting for her to launch a final attack. Vera stayed quiet. Then what are you planning to do? Dana asked me. I already did it, I said. I filed. The words hit the air like a slammed door. Dana's perfectly calm expression cracked for the first time. Vera's arms dropped and she just stared at me. This is still your wife, Dana said softly. Not anymore, I said. Not in the way that matters. Dana exhaled, stood up, and picked up her bag. Come on, she said to Vera. Vera hesitated, her eyes locked on me. For a moment, I thought she might try to fight, scream, cry. But she didn't. Vera went upstairs to the bedroom. Then she came back down with 2 suitcases. I'm staying with Dana for a while, she said flatly. No tears, no theatrics, just those words. I nodded. That's probably best. She picked up the bags, paused for a second at the door like she wanted to say something else, but didn't. The door closed behind her with a soft click. When they were gone, the house felt enormous, too quiet, too still, but not suffocating. For the first time in years, it was just my space. I stood in the middle of the living room for a long moment, just listening to the quiet. It wasn't cold this time. It was calm. I cleaned up the kitchen, turned on the TV, and let a detective show fill the house with noise. I poured a drink, sat back in my chair, and realized I wasn't bracing for anything anymore. For the first time in 5 years, the silence finally belonged to me. The morning after that kitchen conversation, the house was quiet again. But this time, I didn't care. No tension in my chest, no pacing around wondering what mood I'd find her in. I made coffee, opened the windows, and realized I wanted noise. Real noise. By lunch, I'd already sent a few texts. Game tomorrow. My place. Bring whatever you want to burn on the grill. They answered fast. Guys always do when meat and beer are involved. The next day, the backyard came alive. Mark showed up first with a case of beer. Dev brought chips and some dip that no one liked, but everyone ate anyway. Mike lit the grill before I even asked. Music from someone's speaker mixed with the sound of kids running through the grass. It was loud, messy, perfect. Standing there with tongs in one hand and a beer in the other, I realized how long it had been since this house felt like a place to live instead of a place to keep the peace. When everyone had a plate in front of them, I finally said it. I filed on Friday. The table went quiet for half a second. Mike grinned and shook his head. Hell yes, man. About time Dev raised his bottle. To Ron, free man, backyard king. Everyone laughed, clinking bottles. Even Mark, who used to tell me to be patient, she'll come around, just smiled and said, feels like we got you back, brother. And they had. We ate, we laughed, we yelled at a game streaming on someone's phone like we were teenagers again. A few weeks later, the divorce papers came through. No courtroom drama, no emotional speeches, just a clean envelope in my mailbox with a date and a stamp. I stood in the kitchen, turning it over in my hands. For a moment, I almost laughed. After years of walking on eggshells, my freedom came on 2 pages of legal language. Word got around, of course. Small town, big mouths. A mutual friend mentioned that Vera is still living with Dana, at least until she finds her own place to live. Apparently, Dana had been posting a lot about new beginnings and choosing yourself on Instagram. I guess that was their PR strategy. I didn't hate Vera, not anymore. Hate is heavy, and I'd been carrying enough weight for years. If anything, I hoped she actually did start fresh somewhere else, maybe even happier than she was with me. But I wasn't going to be the man who kept paying for her lessons. The following weekend, I hosted another barbecue, not to celebrate the divorce, but because I didn't need a reason anymore. The backyard filled with smoke, chatter, and the smell of overcooked burgers. Mark showed up early with his kids, who immediately turned my lawn into a playground. Dev brought too much beer and not enough ice. Mike arrived last and loud, claiming he was fashionably late, as always. At one point, Mark pulled me aside while we were flipping steaks. "You look different, man," he said. "Like, lighter." "Because I am," I said. Turns out silence weighs a ton when it's a punishment. When it's peace, though, it's almost nothing. Later that night, after everyone left and the house was quiet, I stood in the middle of the living room and really looked at it. No tension in the air, no sense that a storm was waiting upstairs. Just a normal house that finally felt like it belonged to me. I poured a glass of whiskey, went out to the porch, and sat there listening. The crickets were loud, the night air was cool, and for once my thoughts didn't sound like someone else's rules. Somewhere out there, Vera was probably telling Dana how cold I'd been, how I gave up too soon. Maybe she was crying, maybe she wasn't, maybe she'd already moved on to the next phase of her life. Either way, I didn't feel guilty, I didn't feel angry, I just felt done. The silence was still there, but it wasn't her silence anymore. It was mine. If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.